Um, per our banter a little bit. So GRC is a missing field that is ignored often. As I shared on your post yesterday, it's generally where executives go to feel good about themselves. They've got their SOC 2 report, they've got their ISO, they've got their certificate, they've updated their security trust and assurance package. But if you and I both agree, we got to get our analyst and engineer. We got to teach them what cloud is. We got to teach them what continuous integration, continuous deployment, how automation actually works. We should not be asking our SREs to take screenshots of a cloud console anymore. Yes, there's administrative controls that do require screenshots, that do require links to Confluence pages, SharePoint sites. But the technical controls should be pulled programmatically, and the auditor should be able to parse a JSON file. And GRC analysts should be comfortable handling JSON files, YAML files, etc., to make sure that they're comfortable interacting as an engineer would, not as just an analyst.
Yep. You know, I 100% agree with that. And I think your point around it makes executives feel good is why we've kind of lost the plot, because it's become about, let me just get that cert so the board's happy and everybody's like, oh, we can go close this deal. But the actual reason for it is supposed to be security and supposed to be helping you improve your security. And I think because we've lived in this screenshot world of the cloud console, everybody knows it's fake. So no one really cares beyond the marketing. But if we get to what you're talking about, where GRC pros are writing scripts, understanding the technology, actually grabbing real data and seeing insights, now you can actually, and I think this is, to me, the best part about GRC are the relationships and the conversations I get to have, because I get to span across an entire organization. But when you go to this checkbox world, you get out of that. You don't get to have conversations. You don't get to build those relationships. And I think for GRC pros, I think a lot of times like people get mad at me because they think I'm shitting on the industry, but it's like, no, I want to preserve the industry. Like this is like a challenge, and the more value you could have is if you get more technical, because you can have better conversations.
Yeah, I think the other thing too, GRC analysts are not known until an audit, and you should be known year round. You should be sitting with your SOC, your NOC, your ops centers, your PR, your marketing team, and getting to know what does their day in the life look like versus, hey, I'm going to schedule a 1 hour meeting with you where you're going to give me evidence. You're going to walk me through this, and I'm going to upload it to my external provider, or I'm going to add the internal checks to our Confluence or SharePoint or whatever we're using to keep our policies and procedures in.
Yep, absolutely. I think that's another one of those big gaps in the space, is that we're not continuous as a just an organization, as a GRC department. It's I'm showing up, and then now you just don't have any relationships to lean on, and also like you're making everybody's life harder by showing up at the end. Like you could have these conversations throughout the year before the external auditor shows up. So yeah, so I think that's another important piece. Like GRC pros, I talk about this in a few places around like treating your GRC program like a product and just having sprints throughout the year. So when an audit comes up, it's just another sprint, but
Yep.
you just did a sprint the week before about something else. And it's like there's so many activities and quarterly, monthly, weekly things that are going on throughout the year that you could be validating and catching, because in most of these audits, whether it's SOC 2, ISO, PCI, et cetera, even if I'm an auditor and I show up and I take a sample of X, Y, and Z, and then I find out, oh, this control had one instance where it fell, but then immediately I can see that you remediated it because you caught it within the time frame that you set in your policy. Guess what? That's not an exception anymore. You're good
Nope.
because you're following your policy, and that's the part that people I think miss.
Yeah, you're preaching something too. We talk about putting security as left as possible with our development team. Your GRC can move left. If I have a task inside the sprint for the compliance analyst to make sure the policy is updated, the standard operating procedure is updated, the infrastructure as code template that we're now using now has the latest control because we just moved from ISO 2013 to 2022, and no one told the SREs that we've switched to 2022 or 2023.
Yep.
And it's like they don't know unless you tell them. So the further you can shift it left to check the infrastructure as code, your formation, your Terraform, to say, I've now got to check. I don't have an any in this formation for this S3 bucket.
Right.
I'm going to catch it. And if I do catch it, to your point, the next release on Monday, that night, the next week fixes it, and the auditor can say, okay, here's the PR where I made the change, and it was made by a GRC analyst, not
Right.
by the SRE.
Right. And that's literally your control operating. Like it's the pro. I think that's like such a good point. Like a lot of people always ask me, like, well, where do I start? What do I do? I think the biggest area is go find an infrastructure as code template, whether it's CloudFormation, Terraform, whatever it is. Go find they're being used. Security has shifted left. Somebody has some IAC that they have wrote that says every server must use this. Every EC2 instance has this AMI, has to have these security groups, X, Y, and Z. And guess what? You now have way more information about a control than you did before, because before you're asking for a screenshot of volumes, EBS volumes, or weird. You're asking for things that don't make sense, essentially. But you can actually just get the infrastructure as code template and say, all right, where is this managed? Oh, it's in this repo? Okay, I can track changes. I know every single time we deploy something, it has to meet these requirements. And now it's like, oh, I can write my policy to actually match reality and not these made up things that I wrote in the policy.
Yeah, and you just called this too, and this is going to probably upset some people, but put your GRC as watchers. Let them do policy as code. Let
Yes.
them write policy as code and let them be a watcher. Hey, this PR just went out on Monday. I'm going to push a policy of code change on Tuesday or even Monday afternoon. So if they're watching because they've switched from an analyst to an engineer, they can tweak it, or they get on the sprint call and say, hey, the next sprint is all policy as code. I'm going to come to you and say, hey, review this PR, clarify what I don't know so that I will know it tomorrow, but today I don't know. And then tomorrow you got to retain it. So when you come back again, to your point, I'm not asking for a cattle versus pet. Like, this is a Lambda service. It's not going to have the same controls as the on-prem Windows 2019 server that you're running.
Right. Right. And that's the part too. I think that if you do this, like as you're describing, if you do this right, what happens, because we live in this world now where everything's ephemeral. Most people are running mainly serverless environments. So things are changing so often. And then sometimes it's like we were serverless yesterday, but today we had to spin up a server because we had to run a Docker container and something else, blah, blah, blah. And if I don't find out about that until 9 months later, bad news bears when the auditor shows up and then you're like, we're 100% serverless. And they're like, well, I just ran this scan and found 5 EC2 instances that say Docker. And you're like, oh, well, let me go ask somebody about this. And now you lost trust. And it's to your point, if I'm embedded, if I shifted left, if I've had these conversations and I'm checking and I'm a watcher, I can see when things change. I can go find out, like, hey, why did we do this? Oh, X, Y, and Z. Okay, cool. I'm going to update the policy to reflect that we have these new resources. And it's just that simple.
Another hot take that I don't think a lot of people is just your GRC teams joining your cabs, your change advisory boards. Do they even know what changes are happening in their environment so that they can go make a policy procedure or standard change? To your point, like if I'm no longer serverless, that's a standard just changed. When we said we're going to be serverless, now I have to put an exception or at least an appendix for this period, March through April. We're running a Docker on an EC2 because we haven't put it ephemeral yet, so it can spin up and spin down. And that can be notated. And when you get to the audit, you'd be like, 11 months, this was us. Here's the 1 month. Here's my evidence for that 1 month. Here's the PR. Here's the change ticket as well.
Right. And that's, I think, as well, the GRC pros, if you do this, you now can have a better conversation with the external auditor. You can save your engineers time from having to go answer dumb questions from the external auditor because you know what's going on. Like you said, how many GRC analysts actually understand the true SDLC? What really happened? What's going on in the CI/CD pipeline? What local tools are being used in the IDEs of the developers before they even push up there? Like, are you using GitHub or GitLab? Like, do you even know any of these things? And it's like, we all focus on like, let me get your Jira ticket or your ticket. It's like, that's the outcome of the control.
Yes.
All the stuff's happening before. And again, like to your point, go learn that, go figure that out, go be a part of those meetings, even just as a fly on the wall so you can figure out what's going on. Such a good take.
And the other thing too, and you called it out here, is the GRC should understand a day in the life of the person. So if they're running an IDE, have we patched it? That's your ops team or your security. So they're learning not just the compliance piece. Are we patching the IDEs? Do we know how many IDEs that we're running? Do they have Copilot embedded in them? Do they have Gemini embedded in them? Do we allow Gemini or Copilot to be analyzing our code in the IDE? And that's where your supply chain third-party risk piece comes back into play, not just the audit, because we forget about supply chain attacks and third-party risk as well when it comes to this.
Because we don't know what's going on. We just don't know the tools. And I think, you gotta understand and be like, all right, so everybody's using Cursor now as our IDE. All right, let me go, before I say like, all the things you have to do. I'm going to go learn about Cursor. I'm going to watch some YouTube videos. I'm going to go learn how people are using it securely. Then I'm going to come back and ask educated questions about our use of it so that I can make sure that I understand for the eventual conversations that are going to be had. And it's like, and then you might learn some things like, oh, we can use Cursor rules to make sure that we implement some things according to our best practices, our guardrails. But without that understanding and going and learning, you can't do it.
Even better, like you could say, this is the standard config. This is your policy. You have to embed this, and I want to see evidence that you put that config in your IDE versus just saying, or heaven forbid, go find the stick or the minimum security baseline that's required and implement that through GPO so that they can't locally add something or push it to the cloud unless you allow them to push it to a secured S3 bucket or a secure SharePoint site or whatever
Yep.
you're pushing that code to.